Hey guys, welcome to PAWCast number 68. On this week's episode, I have Rebecca Enerson as well as Aimee Labrie, who are both third-year MSU vet students who have been here all summer on an externship, joining me to talk a little bit about kind of how they got here, as well as what their time has been like while being with us during the summer in the medical support staff role and what that's been like, as well as kind of what they're looking forward to as they make their way back to vet school here within the next couple of weeks. Hope you enjoy.
You guys are really quiet.
Yeah, right? Like, why can't I hear anything? Today, I have Rebecca and Aimee. Rebecca is not new to the podcast.
Yeah.
Aimee is new to the podcast, but she's not new to PAW because she's been here for a while. But we are going to talk about some stuff that we currently don't know what all of it is because we're kind of winging it. And that's the way she goes around here. But you guys have been here since, was it June?
May? I got here like May 15th.
May 15th. Mm-hmm. And this will go up on Thursday. Today is Tuesday. And you guys are supposed to leave by the schedule on Friday.
No, she's here another week.
Amy's hanging out longer.
Like, I drive home Friday morning, and it is going to be the most tragic thing that's ever occurred. Like, I do not want that to be a thing at all.
I have to stay in the city house alone for another week before I go home.
I mean,
don't worry. The ghost doesn't like it when you're by yourself. It's fine.
The ghost likes me. It just apparently doesn't like
doesn't
Rebecca.
like me. No. It was making noises last night, just so you know. It's fine.
So really, I'm curious what your guys' time has been like thus far, because I mean, I don't work on the floor really at all. I mean, Rebecca, I was around for Memorial Day and we got to run through that malarkey together a little bit, but, you guys, I mean, you came here with the intention of essentially putting the emergency shoes on, seeing how they fit, if they feel good, if not, basically, right? Because how do you really know if you enjoy the veterinary emergency and urgent care setting without actually doing it? So I kind of want to know what your guys' thoughts are when, you know, Aimee, we're going to need to learn a little bit about your background too. So that's probably a good place to start. But yeah, like tell me a little bit about kind of, you know, where you came from and what got you here. And then also kind of how you felt about being here at PAW.
Oh, yeah. So I, from Michigan, always been in Michigan, literally lived in the same house until I moved out for vet school. But no, went to undergrad, didn't really know what I wanted to do. Just knew, really liked biology. I like science, I like answers, and just kind of went with it. Always thought, I'm not one of those people that becomes a vet. Like I'm not doctor material. And then I was in one of my cell biology classes, and I saw the people that were talking about how they're going to take the MCAT and become human doctors, and I was like,
that sounds absolutely atrocious.
I was like, you guys,
like you're going to be doctors?
Yeah. And so I was like, I can do that. So that was one of like the turning points where I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's what I should do with this degree instead of just graduating and being like, I've got a biology degree.
Right.
But I really didn't kind of commit to that until like my senior year, which then I was like, I should be doing better if I want to get into vet school. So I had a whole slew where I went through retaking classes because I graduated undergrad with a 2.6 GPA. I did not try.
C's for degrees, baby.
No one told me to try. I was like, well, you graduate.
Right.
You're done. No one cares. So I had to retake a whole bunch of classes, went to community college, did the whole shebang, got into vet school. I'd say technically on my second try, actually on my third. I don't count the first one. It was like a test run.
Little trial run. How do these applications work? Wait,
Right?
How do I do this?
Yeah,
What's paper?
They're online then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Fully online.
I print them out after, but no.
Yeah.
But no. So ended up deciding to go to vet school, and part of a bigger factor in that was that during undergrad, I was actually working at a horse barn, kind of on the path to become a horse trainer. And I was going to be pretty good at it. But kind of the culture there and what was really like expected of me didn't really line up with how I wanted to live my life. And so I was like, well, if this isn't going to work out, I need to leave, make sure it's not what I want to do. And I left. I didn't need it in my life. And I was like, that's where I'll go. Back into vet med. And part of that too was when I was at the stable and like visiting vets would come and they'd be doing procedures and I'm like, oh, like right there, like, oh, how are you doing that? How does that work? And so I was like, well, this is what I should be doing. So went to Michigan State, actually intending to do equine theorio. So reproduction work.
Okay. Thank you for the description for the guy that has no idea what that word meant.
I don't know where the word comes from. No one knows what it means. Equine repro. Some people don't know what equine horses.
I got that one.
Right.
But came into school thinking, oh well, I might specialize in that, and like that's what I'll do. And now I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm going to own a practice. That's about as far as I've gotten now, and I'm still pretty open to a lot of things. I've always been really comfortable and can see myself doing a lot of stuff. So it's hard for me to be like, oh, this is exactly what I want to do. Yeah. So like you said, coming here, it was one of those things where, well, I want to see what this is. Do I like this? And another part of coming here was more just like working with Carlo through the house system and just being so inspiring about like the changes, the progression, the culture, efficiency, and how like things can be much better. And that was something I was like, I got to see it. I got to see it. I got to live that. Right. Because even if I don't like end up here or like get to be here as much as I want, I can at least take that with me. Right. And like spread it. Yeah. Yep. So good context. You guys were both house captains. Still are technically for another 6 months. There's the
we have a
transition period now. We haven't really talked a ton about the house system on the podcast, but it was something that Carlo and Katie essentially, they didn't start, but they funded through the Student Success and Wellbeing Fund that I don't remember the exact name of it, but essentially the idea is to create smaller groups within incoming students to be like, hey, I'm a part of this house and we do things together. And now it's kind of hitting, kind of phase 2 of being a little bit more on the professional development. And really the big focus on it is going to be encouraging and developing a growth mindset in everybody that's a part of it. So it's going through its changes, but basically, even though you guys did it through COVID year, I mean, y'all facilitated things for people to do in vet school that weren't exactly just like didactic learning events, right? Yeah.
One of the big things I think we did was our speaker series events. Yeah. So we have 4 total. At least, I think. Yeah. At least. And that was like our big thing was that like we couldn't do a lot of the events that we wanted to do. Right. And so trying to come up with things that people were genuinely interested in. So we had Katie come and she kind of talked about her like unique path and the way that she didn't follow kind of what a lot of people think you have to follow with your veterinary degree. And I know we have a friend at home who was like, I don't know if I should still be in vet school. Like she wants to do like some government work and stuff and was like, this seems like I'm learning a lot that isn't applicable to what I actually want to do. Like, should I even be here? And COVID was just not a good year, I think, for everyone everywhere, but especially where we were, like in our degree. Second year is supposed to be hardest, and it lived.
And you got stuck in a room for 9 months.
yeah, more than that. It was a grand old time. Oh, so we're trying to move it past just like oh, you have this event and you play bingo, which I mean is a great thing. Like,
there's a place for that for sure.
I love those events where it's just mental well-being, but also moving it through into like the cultural development and trying to like just seed little growth mindsets in our like first and second years especially, and then trying to make that transition to like fill the clinic with some more growth mindset, because it's not quite there.
Yeah. Yes, and then so the first couple of years, it kind of we let administration kind of ran it. It did kind of move its way into that more just interpersonal, like kind of fun stuff. But then Carlo got pretty heavily involved here within the last year or so, which you guys had a chance to basically meet with him once a month, every 6 weeks, something like that. So that's kind of what you were talking about, how. I mean, everybody knows that Carlo's pretty good on going on long rants that are really inspiring and like make you feel like you can change the world.
You mean the one meeting that we had with him him talking for 65 minutes?
I was there.
And we just sat there and I just nodded and I was like, my mind is blown.
Yeah.
Like, that.
Yeah.
I want that.
We had no idea going into the meeting because we're like...
I don't think he did either.
Well, yeah.
Okay, well, first off, we didn't know who he was.
No, we spent our entire first year of vet school just being like, the house system is this thing where you do arts and crafts sometimes and you wellness. And we're like, okay, cool. Like, I wanted it to be more than that because I thought like, oh, I'm going to vet school. It's got Harry Potter houses. Like, this is going to be super cool. We're going to do a lot of stuff. And it did turn out a little like arts and craftsy. And then, but I'm like, I still want to be a house captain because like I really like this idea. But going into that meeting, we had no idea like how much is really behind the house system, why it's there, like, and we were like, this is amazing, like that, like we need this.
Yeah, and that was now that's basically what the plan is. Now hopefully we can get back to actually doing stuff in person, and I know we're kind of working on some things here for this next semester, but that was really how you guys got connected more in depth to PAW for the both of you, which was a welcomed coincidence, if you will. But yeah, I guess talk to me. You said it's basically that's Carlos said all of these things about how it can be so much better. I'm curious, is he full of shit?
I would not say he's full of shit. I actually would say that you guys have ruined me.
All right.
We were talking about this morning.
Yeah. In the words of the cult classic film The Room, you're tearing me apart, Lisa.
That's a deep cut.
Well, because, okay, so I came into this and I'm like, I don't want to do ER. Like, all those ER friends are crazy. And we just did the freaking film
takeover.
Where I'm like, I still don't want to do ER. And that was mostly based on, like, my first 2 days being here. And I'm like, this is over. Like, it was really busy. We had, like, patients waiting, like, hours and hours. And I'm like, this is weird. I don't know about this. And then I've been here and I'm like, oh, shit. I'm like, okay. I'm seeing it now, like I'm getting it. And then part of it is also just seeing how like beautifully efficient things can be. Like it's not perfect yet,
right?
But you're like constantly working at it, constantly improving. And that's something like, well, it's the growth mindset, but it's so, that's what I want. And to see how much better and how more efficient and how you can keep trying to be working towards something that not only makes your like employees' lives better, but even the patients and caregivers. That's awesome.
Okay.
And you've ruined me. So now I'm like, well, where do I go from here?
Right. Well, that's a good question because there's only so many hands and so much time to go around for sure, right? So like that's been an interesting thing when Carlo really first started like heavily integrating right around the time that I actually came on to PAW a couple years ago. He threw all these irons in the fire, right? And then all of them hit all at once. So it was like, oh, not only is the clinic twice as busy as it was 2 years ago, now we need to go through the process of building a new building. Oh, and there's these 3 students that I met 2 years ago that now want to come be here full time, all at the same time. And there was all these things happening, and and they all pretty much hit last summer. And it was exhausting, but totally worth it. And now it's like just starting that cycle kind of over again. But it's worthwhile because that's the mindset that we're trying to basically incite is like, no, it actually can be pretty good. And you're right. It's never perfect. And that's one thing that I think a lot of people, from the outside, or maybe just in general, they forget. Like, you're never going to actually do this thing perfect. There's always going to be something that you're going to miss on. But as long as you hit it 90% of the time, like, that's really, 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 really good. And if you're doing it with the intention of, service mindset, and never, for me, the biggest thing is never saying no to a patient that really, should be here. There's a lot of wins that are in there, and you can't really just focus on the losses. But I would say that our losses are probably a little bit less. So I don't know where I was going with that thought. So I'm going to throw it to the girl that has fully consumed all of the Kool-Aid.
I don't know.
I think you figured out how to brew it here, because I've been there. I've been in those shoes. I am currently in those shoes. But I am curious because, when you were on here with Bree,
I'd only been here, like, it
was like 2 days.
I'd worked 2 days.
Yeah.
And
you were like, I am so inspired by Carlo and like what I think is happening here, that it's like, well, it's kind of similar to you, Amy, where it's like, I just got to go and see if this is all a farce or not. And now you've been doing this for 2 months. Pretty heavily. I mean, I think you've put in more hours than like anybody else that works here in the last 2 months, which is pretty impressive.
I would not be surprised.
Yeah.
Because like 1 week, Amy, you were like on vacation, and I full send. Full send. My paycheck, like the time clock, I had like 120 hours in 2 weeks. And I was like, and I'm doing good. Like,
well, I'm curious, like, because I'm a big believer in work-life balance is set by the individual. Did that feel overwhelming?
No.
So tell me about that.
Not even like
Why?
a little bit. And it shocks me because I've worked, when I was the summer I applied to vet school, I was working 2 veterinary jobs, applying to vet school, and writing my honors thesis all at once. And most people don't do that. Most people are like, you're stupid. And I was exhausted that summer, and I was working 60 hours a week and not like enjoying it. It was hard, and I was like coming home and just sleeping. Like, that was my life, was work, writing my thesis, and applying to vet school.
Yep.
And then I come here, and it's so different. Like, you want to come in, like, sure, like pick up some shifts, or like we have openings, like, you want to like do stuff for PAWCasts? Like, absolutely, like, do that too. And like those weeks where I have those crazy hours, I'm not exhausted because I'm enjoying it, because it's keeping my mind busy. It's not mindless tasks.
Right.
Like, I am fulfilled when I'm doing it.
And to go along with that, it is fulfilling at a position that is of a lower skill set than you're getting into, right? Because you've been working at the medical support staff level, which is, not that there's a hierarchy, but there is a level of skill set, right?
Yeah.
And at that level, it's been good, right? But now I think you've also been able to have a few days.
Yeah. I had 2 doctor days, as I called them, and I texted Carl and I was like, "So can this be a thing?" And he was like, Why are you asking?
Just show up.
Yes, like, absolutely. I think he even put like eternal growth mindset in that text message somewhere.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And so I came in, and I loved it. That was fantastic. I learned so much. I followed him for like a whole 12-hour shift, and then the next day I came in, and then Katie was doing a dental where we removed like 35 teeth, like, which is, for reference, that's like all of them, but like 2. In that dog. And he had like literally 2 teeth left. And I learned so much. And then to like apply like the interpersonal relationships that I've made this summer. And then still, like, I've felt stuck in other jobs where it's like, okay, like, you are our veterinary assistant, you are our receptionist. you don't like stay in your place. And here, like, nobody even blinked when I was here for 2 days doing like doctor things, like going in on consultations, like doing, like looking at diagnostics. They were like, oh yeah, like, do you understand what's happening here? Like, can you explain it to me? Like that to me is so much more valuable. Like, I have not had places that have done that in the past, where like you can make it what you need it to be, and you can, and it's that eternal growth mindset, and it's amazing. Like, because that's what I feel like I've needed, is I need a position that can grow and can like change with my growing skill set. Because I mean, I came here, I could draw blood, I could place catheters, I could do like our preliminary technician thing. But let me tell you, my like jugular, which is like drawing blood from like the neck, like it was mediocre. You know, I could probably hit it like 2 out of every 3 patients. Sometimes it took me a little bit longer, like no problem. Yesterday, like Bruder was like, hey, they're having trouble in Fleb. Will you go help them? Like,
right.
Oh my goodness, I'm the person giving help.
Right.
Like, I trained one of our new staff how to place a catheter because I've become so much more proficient, because I talked to the technicians and I was like, I want to work on that. Like, I know as a doctor, those aren't going to be skills necessarily that I have to put to use every day. I'm going to have team members supporting me. But they were like, okay, like, we're going to work on it. You're going to get better. And I did. Like, those skills have grown more in the last 2 months than they did in the previous 5 years.
Right.
Like,
it's amazing what opportunity you'll do for you, isn't it?
Right, yeah, right. So saying that I could be exhausted after working 60 plus hours in a week, like, yes, physically my body's like, could we not stand anymore? Like, I would really like it if you sat down.
Right.
But like, I can go home and I can listen to PAWCasts and I can read and I can go on walks. Like, I feel like there's energy still left to do other things. So I have fully drank the Kool-Aid. And
I get it. I get it.
Like,
So one of the things when I was, or I just graduated college, I got really big into like motivational stuff. And, you know, I kind of learned that there's highs and lows in that. And there's, you know, there are good things about getting really heavy into that world, but also like that was where I learned that motivation is fleeting. And you really have to have something that's also like you have to have a purpose that's in front of you, because it doesn't matter how hard you push from behind. It doesn't matter how much gas you throw on this fire. If you don't know where you're pointed, it's so hard to maintain, right? And in that process, one of the things that I was a quote was, it was more like a parable. It was, you know, guy comes home from work. He's got no energy to do anything. Like, his wife asks him to make dinner. He's like, no, I don't want to. I'm exhausted. I just want to sit on the couch and I just want to shut everything off. Right. So like you were saying, like, I would go to work, I would do my thesis, and I would apply to vet school and nothing else. And in the parable, he's like, all of these things, he just says, no. And then his phone rings and his buddy asks him to golf. And as soon as that happens, he's enriched with energy, and he has plenty of energy. There's actually kind of in a level, if you can actually convince your brain that you have energy, it will release all of the energy that's necessary. And the cool part about purpose is it does it for you, because you can continue to see it, and you don't actually have to have that be an active process of re-energizing yourself, because you're just going to the next step and you know that it's worth it. So your brain's just like, well, clearly this is a worthwhile investment in my time and effort, so we're just going to do this. So something to think about. Golf, next time that you feel exhausted, just you're off the couch, think about golf.
I'm going to tell you one thing, Ben. Golf is not going to give me energy. But you know,
you get the point.
I get the point. I will think about other things, but I will not think about golf.
And what I think is really cool.
But you're going to remember it now.
No. What I think is really cool about like kind of what's been going on here and what you just said is that coming out of freaking second year vet school, all online, literally
defeated,
depressed, dying, whatever D word you want to use, we were it.
Yeah.
And it's like part of coming here was like, I need to like be motivated again, because I need to remember my why. Like, why am I here? Because right now I'm miserable. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I feel like I can't remember anything. I don't know why I'm doing this. And getting here and working again and being like kind of excited to see things and have people excited to have you get excited to see things.
Yeah.
Oh, like I feel like a new person. And like when I said I worked at the barn, that's me working like 12-hour days, 5 days a week and a Saturday. Mm-hmm. And really, I would come home and I'd just be like, the most I could do is try to stay awake until I fell asleep and then got up and did it again. Mm-hmm. And so my body had been trained to be like, when you're home, like when you're not working, you need to lay down. Mm-hmm. And my boyfriend hates that. But being here, and that was one of the cool things about trying something that's like, oh, these are 12-hour days. Yep. I'm like, oh, I've done that before, but not that long. Right. And
these are different 12-hour days.
These are different 12-hour days. Also not as physically exhausting, but
right.
I don't know, I'd like to argue this is I get as much done as I would in a gym workout with one patient.
But you're not having to handle 1,200-pound cats.
Yes. And you're not like throwing hay around and shit.
Yeah.
This is valid. But no, and so I find myself actually being bored of sitting around.
Yeah.
Where like vet school last year had me being like, I just need to lay on the couch and watch TikTok for 10 hours.
Yeah.
I did.
Oh yeah.
That Thursday before that exam.
Oh my, I couldn't do anything.
You gave me anxiety.
I give her anxiety all the time because
she doesn't feel enough of it. She needs to feel more.
No, I'm like the procrastinator where I'm like, it'll be fine. Like, I'll do the best I can. I can't study for more than like 6 hours at a time anyway. Like, why start now?
Right.
So, yeah, no, and she hates that. I'll have like 8 assignments that I have to do for like One Health or whatever it was.
You're just taking on so much of this energy for no reason. Like,
I don't take it on. I self-produce it.
Well, yeah, you're like putting more anxiety out into the world for somebody else to take on, but they don't. So you're just like, well, clearly someone needs this.
Yes, no, that's literally that's exactly what that is. Well, I'll text them at like 5 p.m. and be like, I think I'm done studying. I feel good. What happens, and Amy's like, shit, I should start studying. And I'm like, what do you mean start? And it's that every exam, every single one. And I don't know why. It surprises me because she is wildly successful. And like,
well,
total, like
most classes.
No. You pass. You
pass.
Wildly successful, right? Mm-hmm. We're wildly successful.
So you just got to stay in your lane a little bit then.
No, and I have fully accepted this responsibility of bearing Amy's anxiety for this.
Well, okay, so
because I have to, it has to exist, Ben.
Well,
someone has to be concerned.
It doesn't have to exist.
It has to.
I promise it doesn't.
Well,
see. Okay, I think we just deal with anxiety differently.
Yes.
So your anxiety is a motivator for you to get things done. Yes. My anxiety is crippling, so I just sit there and binge watch an anime instead of doing anything I'm supposed to.
Right.
And then I'll be like, oh, well, now I have a few hours. I might as well try. That's the best I'm going to get.
No, mine is like, you have 18 hours left.
Oh.
No.
See, maybe I know because I lived more of the life of being a college student like you, where it's like, well, I'm going to put 60 minutes into this and we're going to roll the dice.
That's absolutely terrible.
Well,
you live on the seat, like the edge of your seat, like Carlo did.
Well, no, it makes it sound like I don't care. Cause like,
no, you do.
We'll go into a class, like, so start a new class, and I'm like, full send, like, let's go. And I like do the best notes
for the first 2 days.
The first 2 days, I've got my notes out there. I've watched everything, read everything, like, and I'm like pristine.
She's like, I made beautiful diagrams for you.
Oh,
would you like these diagrams?
It gets to like the 3rd day, and I'm like, this is too much work.
She's like, I didn't do any of the prep.
No, I'm like, this isn't sustainable. I'm going back to watching TV.
Right. So that. I know exactly what that is. Like, I feel that so hard. Like, I've started. I love Legos. I'm terrible.
As long as they're picked up.
With Legos. Well, we're not even gonna get. I have a 2-year-old Enerson, and I have a lot of dice. I have nuked my foot with a D4 so many times. It's terrible, but we're not talking about dice right now.
Legos, yes.
So Legos. There's something about that or puzzles, or just like this thing that like when it sits on your table, you just feel like you have to get it done. And that to me, like I was the same way in college, and really any schooling ever. It's like those first few days, it's like everything's on this table and they just slam you with a syllabus and like 18 assignments, and you got to read 40 chapters of some book that you don't give a flying rat's ass about. And I would just flood my brain full of all of this stuff, just like throwing all the Legos out onto the table. And then once I get to the point of like 80% done, I'm like, eh. Like I clearly did the majority of the work here. Like that's good.
Oh, that is the exact opposite of my brain. The first 20%, I will sit there and agonize over the first 20%. It is the hardest. But once I get started, then it's slow and steady wins the race, and it's just picking away. Yeah. Like just keep chugging along in those 14-hour days.
Oh no, I'm like muscle the shit out of it. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. That's but the cool part about that, and I think that the book applies to too many things, and it stares at me every day. It's that grit. That's why we did those podcasts on that, is because like that first 80 of just like boom is like I kick ass at the interest phase of life. I really like just like learning all of these things and seeing if they're interesting. I'm terrible at practice. Like the idea of doing something for 10,000 hours just makes my everything hurt. Like I like this, the concept of that. Like that's like kind of like you were saying, where it's like you're just going to get into the mud and you're going to work your way through the mud until you get to the other side. Like for me, it's like I'm going to go head first, and then I'm going to try and take a quick left out of the mud pit.
You're like, I got muddy.
Well, right. Yeah, right. See, I'll be like, well, I'll get into the mud. Like, let's go. Right. But then I'm like, I'll be in there doing it. I'm like, no, there has to be a better way. There's got to be a more efficient way of doing this. And then I'll get out and I'll be like, we got to rethink this.
Yep.
But you're just like, no, I'll go.
Well, and the thing is, if you don't have purpose behind it, right? If you don't have that goal, it's just like, well, why did I get muddy?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, and that was vet school. Like, it was, especially the last year, it was a perpetual state of depression and anxiety-fueled fear that I was going to fail. And that's what got me up every day. Not the fact that I would be serving patients at the end of this. Not the fact that, like, I have wanted to do this and that, like, the end goal. It was like, if you don't get out of bed today, and if you don't do this assignment, which we don't have a ton of assignments, but if you are not self-motivated to do this, you will falter and you will fail. And especially with COVID, like our friend group, I feel like we have certain things set up to catch people if they fall. But like, not everyone has that, and I feel like this last year has truly shown that vet school was like, you fell. Enjoy repeating that class.
Yeah.
Like
a part of that's we can talk about like the fractured foundation of what the education system is, right? Like there are things that haven't adapted with the time for the last 30 years. If not more than that. Yeah. But also, in reality, as it stands today, it doesn't matter how much you and I talk about it. It ain't changing.
Oh, I am well aware. I am well aware.
So for me, it's like, okay, well then what do we actually have control over? And that's why the house system is going to turn into what it is. It's like, well, we got to get a foot in the door somehow, so now we're going to get a foot in the back door.
Well, I think that's why, like, Amy and I spent arguably when we should have been studying too much time on the house system, simply because of the vision that we have for it.
Yeah.
Of us being like, okay, even if we change this house system like this and it does not give us any impact, even if it's not for us, like it is for the people that come after us, because I don't want them to have the exact same experience. I would like it to be just a tiny bit better.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, though, you say that you know it's time that you should have spent studying. I bet you disagree.
Well, kind of. So you know that where I said like, yeah, this is my full send into something, this activity, whatever it is, whether it's a new class or new hobby, whatever. Whenever we get something that's like, oh, we have to figure this out for the house system, that's like something on my list that should be like down here.
Yeah. No, automatically at the top.
My brain's like, let's spend 4 hours on this. Let's go. And it's like, oh, well, I'll use the rest of the time to maybe finish prep.
No, that was literally me. We would get an email at 9 a.m. So lectures were usually from 8 to noon. And then sometimes I wouldn't pay attention all the way.
Well, yeah.
You know, and then I spent... Like one time, I just spent 4 hours, like absolutely, completely obsessed with making a spreadsheet that auto-calculated the winners from our weekly quiz results because I didn't want to do that every week. No. And that's what I did for 4 hours. Is I coded that spreadsheet.
Which you have to know, she is the queen of spreadsheets.
Yeah?
Oh yeah, she knows all the tricks in Excel. And
how did I not know this?
Oh, she makes them beautiful.
Oh my God, I am. If it can be made into a spreadsheet, then it is a spreadsheet now. Our clerkships from like our friend group has like 6 people. We get our clerkship announcements for our drafts. We get them at work. I'm here at 4 p.m. and I'm like, don't worry, guys. When I get home, I'm making a spreadsheet. I get home. It's 1 a.m. What is the first thing I do? Is I grab my computer and I run to the couch. I'm like, Amy, I get to make the spreadsheet now.
Oh, yeah. No,
so now there's a color-coded spreadsheet with all of us so that we can, see what clinicals everybody has and if they're moving them around and if we can all have diagnostic pathology together. Because now there's 4 of us. No, 5 of us. 5 of us out of 11 in diagnostic pathology in one in one
we're gonna
rotation.
Take over a whole class.
Yeah.
That sounds like.
And that's what I do literally with everything.
A very positive experience for most.
It's great because she's got like that Excel spreadsheet and then I have that high aesthetic.
Right.
So I'm like, well, we need to color code this. It needs like these keys and we need all these different things for whether this is an elective, whether this is planned.
Yep.
And we just have a great time.
Yeah. That was probably so I'll actually put I didn't put it up on the YouTube page yet, but I'll throw it up and then I'll throw a link in the description if anybody's listening. But for the takeover that you guys did, that was really fun from an outsider's perspective to watch the development phase, because the actual production phase is production. Like it's just execution at that point.
Yeah.
But anytime that I throw out an idea like that, I'm super scared all the time because I am more, I bounce. I can be a visionary, but when I have a vision, it's like I really have a hard time fulfilling. But if I have somebody else's vision, I don't have a problem fulfilling it. It's like I can't do both at the same time for some reason. But in that instance, it was like, hey, I have this idea. Please run with this.
Meanwhile,
there's a lot of hope.
You present it, and I'm like, I love it.
Right.
However, we sit in the break room, and you're like, what are your ideas?
Yeah.
And I was like, can we wait for Amy?
Right.
Because I have none. You tell me what to do. I will do exactly what you want. I will do the thing.
Right. But
I don't know.
And then it was Amy walked in, and it was like, oh, well, now this all makes sense.
Yes.
Because as soon as the wheels, it was that, that first 20% agony. But that was probably the coolest part about work is watching you two work together. It was like you bounce things back and forth off of each other so efficiently that like my job in that project was super easy. Like I took an hour to write bad jokes that you guys turned into good jokes.
In approximately an hour. We sat down.
Yeah, it didn't take like any time at
right
all.
before we came.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, let's do this.
Right. But I think that was a cool learning experience to do something different that's creative and that's pure collaboration, right? There's a lot of vulnerability in that. We made fun of ourselves a lot in that process.
Okay, yeah. I will say that a lot of my friends who just happened to like my vet school Instagram because I don't post on my regular Instagram.
I'm sure they were like, what is this?
Yeah. My boyfriend's like, I don't understand this. And my friend's like, what was that thing you were in?
Yeah.
Like, you looked really professional, but I don't understand. I'm like, oh, maybe we're a little heavy on the inside jokes.
But then all of the vet school people I know were like, this is hilarious.
Right.
Okay, good.
This is amazing.
So you got to go into it knowing that you have a very limited audience. And so, but like result regardless, like to me, the experience of going through that and from an outsider's perspective, watching you guys do that, it was like, oh, well, clearly something's working here. But to go back to, how you guys work, collaborate as a friend group in vet school, right? That to me is one of those things where y'all just kind of find your roles. Carlo has talked about that on the podcast before, how, he would be the guy that did all the notes and then everybody would wait for him to send out all of his notes.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't send out all of the learning objectives and completely color-coded with arrows that point to the pictures that then Amy makes into fun little diagram, little one-sheet things that summarize each disease process.
Yeah, because high aesthetic.
Right.
And
boom.
Yeah. But
what I
don't understand is that she'll make fill out all the learning objectives, and I'm like, where did you get this information? I did the exact same prep that you did. I was in the exact same class, and I'm like, I didn't get the answer to that one. She's just magic. I don't know. That's why we need her notes.
And then, but if it weren't for what you, Enerson, would do, your thing wouldn't exist. I mean, it could, but it wouldn't be to the same level, if that's fair.
Yeah, they're like, generally, I do like to make things straight from my own work. Mostly what I use your notes for is when I'm panicking and I haven't studied at all, and it's right before the exam, and I just need to read through what I was supposed to learn. Yeah. Or like take notes quickly on that, but
then you make the one sheet.
Yeah.
And then it's consumable to like everybody. And it's those highlights, right?
Well, then you have like different forms of media. So like not everyone can just read notes with like pictures and arrows and things.
Yep.
Some people need like actual diagrams or tables, which I didn't think I would make tables.
Oh, neuro.
Oh my God, neuro made me make so many tables.
Oh my God, I just had like 30 straight pages of tables. And I was just like, this is terrible.
Oh no.
But I mean, it was the only way to organize neuro. And I don't know why, but that was it.
Yeah.
You guys made it, right?
Yeah, I am here, right? I can finish myself.
Yes. Third year, here we come.
Yeah, I like it. So going into third year, basically, you guys. Actually, I don't want to run away from it now that I'm recollecting this thought, because I don't want to get away from the house system thing.
Okay.
Yep.
Is you talk about how it's time that you should have quote unquote spent on studying.
God. He did come back to it.
I did.
Yeah,
that's okay.
I couldn't let this one go.
It's okay, Ben.
So, I personally, I try to fight that all the time. Where it's like there's just something that's in the forefront of my brain, and it's like I just really want to work on this right now, like just all the time. But I know that there's like 8 other things I probably should do, but I simply cannot do them, or if I do them, they're half-assed.
Because I want to be doing the other thing.
As soon as you do the thing, everything else is so much easier.
I mean,
it's so much easier.
Hence why especially this last year, I kind of just said, F it. Like, you know what? I know myself. I know I will get the prep done. I know I will finish my learning objectives. You know what? I want to spend 4 hours doing house system things and being a nerd and organizing my email. Like,
organizing emails.
Right? Like,
finally getting through that, you just feel like the weight off your shoulder. Yeah.
Sorry, Ken.
I get it.
Yeah.
I can't stand a full inbox.
Right? And so, like, finally allowing myself to be like, you know what do you want to do?
Right.
Yeah.
Do you want to read a book? Right? Like this last April.
You're allowed.
Well, I was a avid reader. Like, like those summer little like learning like not contests, but challenges for like kids over the summer where it's like, read 40 hours over the summer. Hi, librarian. It's been 2.5 days. I've read 40 hours. Can I have all my prizes now? Like, and they knew it was me.
Right.
And they were like, yeah, you're not lying.
Yeah.
Like, you're a freak.
Believable.
Like, absolutely. And once I made it to vet school, like it had tapered off in undergrad for sure. Mm-hmm. And then coming into vet school, like I not denied, but like was just like, there's not time for that.
Right.
This last April, in the middle of a class, I was like, you know what I want to do right now? Binge read 800 pages of this book. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to do it. And then it's like May 15th, and I've read 10, like 600 to 800 page, like fantasy adult novels. Like, and
you bought more.
And then I bought more.
Yeah.
So like, what was the results from like an actual grades perspective? Did it impact anything?
No.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think.
Like, I think I literally did better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me binging an entire anime,
like,
instead of like doing anything for a class, like it might have, like a couple questions. But mm-hmm. like if you're present in class, you're supposed to be getting like
multiple exposures. Yeah.
So mm-hmm. even if you missed it in prep or you didn't finish all of prep, like you should still be getting mm-hmm. exposed to it. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, I kind of remember that. So like my chances of getting that multiple choice question right, about the same.
Yeah. Right. No. So like, but that throughout second year, there was definitely, I'm going to call it an incline. It was not a decline of where I was just like, you know what?
Yeah.
I did my best. Mm-hmm. And we're going to say that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. And we're going to accept that. And I was actually talking with Carlo the other day about that, about how like first year I verbalized out loud, like grades don't, like it doesn't matter. I'm here to pass, to learn, to like become a vet at the end of it. Second year is when I actually embraced that idea a little bit.
Well, I think we kind of had to after like one.
When you're
okay, so like first year, doing well, feeling good about grades.
You're like, okay, this is a little challenging.
Yeah, and
like, it's a little hard.
You get into second year and you're like, okay, still doing pretty good. Like, yeah, and then you hit one class where you're like, oh, I did not do good at all, and you're like, well, I might as well.
Yeah.
Like I've already hit that, so like anything's better than that.
I didn't do too bad in that one because I refused. Because I'm spiteful.
I can't remember.
And
well, there was only one class that I actually So yeah, there was only one class that I actually like didn't do that great in. I think it was last semester, and it wasn't
MSK.
I feel it was endo.
Oh yeah.
And I was so excited for endocrine because I'm like, this is so applicable. This is going to be great. Learn about all these diseases, and it just the way it was taught did not coordinate with like my brain and like how the questions were written for the exam.
The questions were written in an exceptionally difficult manner.
It wasn't something like normally I can learn something, think about it, and like I'm able to know that enough to be able to apply it to questions.
You don't have to rote memorize things.
No.
If you understand the concept and you know the terminology, then you can work your way through to the answer.
So it just literally didn't.
That was not.
The way the exams work.
Yes. That was not this class. It was like, oh, you memorize that if this one value is this point, this much below the curve, but we're not going to give you reference ranges. But like, it's like a thing.
Oh no, it would be like, oh well, instead of asking you like, oh, what does this patient have given like these lab results or like what are you thinking of, it's like, oh, this patient has this already, like what values are like this and what would you expect, or like what something like, about another disease, and it's like
it'd be like, here are the values of this that led us to believe that it has Addison's, and then it's like, what other values would be wrong and what would they be? And I'm like, I don't know. I didn't memorize that. I learned that if I look at a patient, these are the values that I look at, and this is the pattern that I would expect. I did not look at I did not memorize what the chloride is going to do in this specific type of patient. Because you taught me to look at this specific test. I know to look at that test. If that's inconclusive, then let's evaluate some of our other parameters.
Yeah. That gets kind of into like that concept of like the negative diagnostic though too, right? Like, like you have to like, and I think that's really what your brain is saying in that instance. It's like, well, in reality, it doesn't matter how much of this that I know. Like I'm gonna miss on some of these. It's just the reality of medicine. It's called practice. So like if you're ready for the the idea of saying, if we do this diagnostic, we will either get yes or no, essentially. And I'm oversimplifying the shit out of
this.
Yes,
no, or maybe.
Yeah.
Right. But that, to be ready for that, rather than having the expectation of, I'm a doctor, so I need to know the diagnostic to get the yes.
Right.
That's an unfair expectation. That's unrealistic. That does not, and I don't know, I'm not living your guys' life, but y'all are as close to baby vets as I've had in a while in here.
No, we're baby vets.
Right.
Like little infant vets.
Yeah.
So,
I know a lot of people don't like that term.
That's fine.
But usually I think it's because they're referring to like first year out. Like when you're first year out, don't call yourself a baby vet.
No,
right.
you are a vet.
Like,
yeah.
But
yeah,
I think as a vet student, it is.
Oh yeah,
it is logical to say, like, I am a baby vet.
Yeah.
So because of that fact, what is the expectation what are you perceiving is the expectation for when you actually graduate?
That I won't know what the frick I'm doing.
And
that is, I was talking with
A person.
A doctor here. Christina.
Okay.
I was talking with Christina the other day, and I was like, yeah, like, you've been here like about a year. Yeah. Like how's it going? And she was like, you know what? Like, the best part is that I can do all of these diagnostics. And if I turn around and say, I don't know what is happening, that's okay.
Yeah.
And, like, that is the expectation that, like, I feel like is sometimes portrayed in vet school. But a lot of times they're like, no, like, gold standard. Like, do all the gold standard. Like, and then you'll get these answers. And sometimes you won't know what's happening. But, like, I feel like as a vet, like, you come out, like, you have the tools to be successful. But you also, like, accept the fact that you're not going to know and you're going to have to work at it. But, like, it will come.
Well, and I think that if you go into it with that with the expectation that, you know, you're not going to be able to say I don't know. If you go into it with the mindset of I can't miss, I can't fail, I have to bat 1,000, like I can't make mistakes. That to me is the fastest route into the same mindset that you guys were essentially pushed into through COVID vet school. Is like that, like that darkest pit of like, oh my God, why am I doing this? What am I doing? This is terrible. Is there something over there?
I don't know.
Oh, no. Don't worry about it.
What are you looking
I know, I'm very, like, self-conscious about, like, any noise I could possibly make.
Oh, I'm just going to make all the noises.
What is
It's
making
good.
Well, no,
It's
because
good.
my boyfriend has misophonia, and so,
Okay.
like, I can't eat an apple in front of him. So if I think I might make any mouth noise, I'm just over here.
Oh, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I thought you were looking over here, and I'm like, is there like a dog?
No.
It's
Is there something
we're
in this
good.
corner?
We're good.
That's acceptable.
Yeah.
I applaud you for your graciousness.
my self-consciousness, yes.
So that, but again, to go back to, because this is what I love about the podcast. Sometimes you just got to go where the squirrel's going. That to me, those expectations on yourself is the thing that pushes you into that place, and that place is the thing that takes the light away is the absence of hope. And that was my favorite part about that book. And I swear, everybody should read Grit, because it taught me a lot about the way that I think about how I work, what I'm working on, where I'm spending my time, all of this stuff. Because what it did is it said, hey, if you're interested in this thing and you know that you can't think about something else until you at least get through this process, because you can't triage the things in your life without going through that interest phase. Yeah, so there's something telling you that this is a higher triage item, but you're just being like, nah, I'm not gonna ignore those variables. It's like, no, it's just way easier to allow prioritization in life to happen. Like you can't lose your guiding light. You got to have principles. You got to have your why, right? And I think you kind of brought that up, right? Like I kind of lost that. So know what that is. Know why it is that, you know, what your kind of what your hope for your intentions in life are, right? Mm-hmm. Not to say that you're going to do them perfectly. You know, like for me, I really have a desire to be a great husband and father, and I'm not great at that all the time, but I at least want to be that, right? Yeah. But, you know, that doesn't mean that I don't also have interests. That doesn't mean that, you know, when my buddy says yesterday, like, hey, we're going to play D&D tonight, are you going to come? And I'm like, I haven't really seen my son a lot in the last 2 months, but also that sounds fun. Yeah. And I know that if I would have stayed home, I would have hung out with him, but I would have been thinking about D&D the whole damn time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so now that I'm going to hang out with him, like specifically on Thursday and Friday, it's like, well, that's what we're doing today. Mm-hmm. And it just makes it better. So, but the reason is because me being able to do that, like I can have hope in a lot of different areas. And that's the thing that I don't lose. And if you were talking about walking out of vet school with all of these expectations and like just berating yourself to the point where it's like, I can't miss, you're going to lose hope instantly. Because as soon as you fail, as soon as you miss on one, I'm a piece of shit. I'm a piece of garbage. There's nothing that I haven't earned this. Imposter syndrome comes into play, all that crap.
This summer, my one goal, the one goal I had that I wrote in my notebook about for like the first 4 weeks I was here, 3-4 weeks, was I wanted to build like my confidence and like work on that. Yeah. And be like, you know what? And not just like confidence, but decrease like the
deprecation.
Yes, that. I almost said depreciation.
They're similar.
Yeah, it's similar. Yeah. And like, so I would come home from a shift and be like, okay, like we had a good 8 hours, but you had a little bit where like you got in your head a little. We're going to work through this and we're going to figure out why you got in your head. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, okay, so we did, but we have worked through this and that was not, okay, we acknowledge like when you made an estimate, you missed one thing on it. Right. Okay, what did you do? You went back up after you were transferring charges and you said, hey, I forgot this. Do you want me to go present another estimate? Mm-hmm. And then you did, and you moved on. Right. Yeah. And you caught the mistake. Even if you didn't catch the mistake and someone else did, like, that's good job.
Yeah. Right. Well, and I mean, I told you, I had a really bad day here once. Like, it's not all been
sunshine and roses.
Mm-hmm. And it's no fault of the clinic or anything. Like, literally, the clinic set me up for success.
You are allowed to have bad days.
My brain set me up for failure. Mm-hmm. So, like, coming into this last summer, I spent all summer working with horses. Yeah. And so, like, first day, we're not coming in just to shadow and, like, do, like, the extern thing. We're here to learn the MSS role and work. Mm-hmm. And so you need quite a bit of days to start to feel comfortable in that role, learn all the things you need to do. And that puts my mind in, like, oh, I'm support staff. Like, I have to have my brain thinking, well, you need to be learning how to do this. Mm-hmm. So, like, quite a few days, that's, like, all I'm thinking about. And I'm like, I have to learn TPRs for small things, because day one, the first thing I listened to was a cat. And I'm like, that's faster than 30 beats per minute.
for reference, that is the, like, the range of a horse heartbeat. Yeah. It's like 30.
Right.
Not
200.
230.
No. Right. And, like, the catheters I'd place are, like, this long and in horse necks. And I'm like, I've seen catheters done in dogs and cats, and I've drawn blood from horses. And it's just, like,
it's different.
Having to transfer everything over was kind of like, I got to put my mind in this game. Because before vet school, like, some of my friends or colleagues, they had, like, some small animal experience where they actually did things. Where in my assistant role, I didn't do any technician things. So, like, the most I did was, like, oral meds and vaccines and, like, sub-Q pokes. Because everything else, that's, like, for a technician to do legally. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. As far as I know.
No. It is right. Because one clinic I worked at, I did arguably too many things that I was like, I don't know how to do that. And they were like, you're fine. And then the other one was like, no, like, you don't know how to do that. Mm-hmm. We're going to have someone else do it. And I was like, okay.
That sounds smart.
Yeah, legally, let's do that. Yeah. A little bit.
But no, so putting myself in this mindset of, like, everything's really different, even though I've been in a small animal clinical setting before, I haven't, like, done the things. Yeah. So there's a lot going on in my head, And then I had one day where, like, everyone was being great to me. And they're like, hey, I'm a doctor. While you're holding this patient, like, I can ask you questions because you're a vet school student.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, great. But my mind's like, it can't click over.
Yep.
Because I'm like, I need to be ready if this patient does something. I'm always thinking about, like, oh, well, how should I be holding this for you?
When you rotate the patient.
Yeah. And, like, what I'll be doing next. And, like, what do you need from me? And so to get into, like, that, like, vet mindset of actually critically thinking, I'm like, I was deer in headlights, and I felt super stupid. I couldn't think of mast cells is what he was asking. He was like, well, what's similar to this type of cell that you're seeing here? And I'm like,
just blank.
Know. Yeah. And so that hurt. Like, and it's something that's so stupid, and because he didn't expect anything of me, and was just like, oh, well, it's like this. Right. Oh, great. Yeah. But, like, in my head, I'm like, whew, imposter syndrome. This is it. It's over for me. I don't know this cell. Why am I here? And then, like, later I go to take an x-ray, and, like, granted, I was told to take this view, but, like, in context, it should have been a slightly different view. And so Carla was like, well, normally when we do that, we want to include the stifles. And I was like, this is it for me. I might
as well go home.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so I go home, and it's all these, like, stupid things that's nothing.
Right.
Everyone does that. No one was mad at me. I shouldn't have been mad at myself.
You have a chorus of people around you saying it's not a big deal.
No, but I go home and I cry in the shower.
Right.
Yeah.
And but it's just one of those things where I felt like I was doing the imposter syndrome thing, and I'm like, why am I doing that?
Well, okay, I have a theory. Is because here, like, everybody has confidence in us. Confidence. I mean, it is okay to be like, yeah, I don't know how to do that when they ask you to do something. And then they're like, oh, I will give it to someone else if we have time. Like, let's teach you. Like, let's get you so that you can do that in the future. That's, like, not been a thing where other people have that sort of confidence in you. Because what day is it?
Tuesday? Today is Tuesday.
It's Tuesday today.
So Sunday, you know, it's insane. We're a little bit short-staffed. Carla's running the bar and seeing patients. I'm standing there waiting for him to hand me this estimate, and he starts walking away to a room. Looks at Trevor and goes, Rebecca's running the bar now. What? What?
Yeah.
Yeah, I ran it for like 4.5 hours.
Yeah. Right.
Terrifying. I had so much adrenaline. There was so much. Oh, my God. I'm like, sorry, everybody. I think things are happening. Nothing's died. So then after like 3 hours, I'm like, hey, Trevor, you have a minute. I need to talk, and I need you to just listen. And I just need to say the things and work through what I have on the bar here so that I don't F it up.
Right.
And he's like, well, I mean, it looks fine.
Right.
And Carla's like, well, we've been watching you. And I'm like, well, I know you have, but it's been 3 hours and nobody came back.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, like, you're fine. Like, you are doing great. Like, if you weren't, we would have come back.
Right.
And that
you would have known if you would have messed up bad enough that somebody else had to come into play.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
like,
no, and it's been interesting because I did another thing with X-ray. Like, it's like technically not wrong, but like
technically not right. Yeah, I get those.
Yeah. So when like Carlo came out of X-ray and I was somewhere else, and I had been taking these views, and he's like, oh well, blah, 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 this is wrong. In like a tone where you'd be like, oh, I didn't want that to happen. And so I was like, oh, God, I did that. This is going to be my fault. What did I do? Someone's going to be mad at me.
Someone's going to be mad. They're going to come. They're going to find me.
No. And then I go up to him like, okay, brave moment. What did I do wrong with the rads? And he's like, oh, what is this? And I'm like, this is not the energy I was expecting. And he's like, oh, yeah. And then he like just explained to me how like the reason why he was a little slightly more upset, like in the moment, was because like he had technically asked for it to be done a certain way, but then that wasn't communicated to me. So it's just a communication problem.
Right.
And then he's like, yeah, no, otherwise it's great. Don't worry about it. And I was like, shoot.
Like the kindness.
Yeah.
Well, it's patience.
And yes,
that
is the word I'm like the patience.
Or like understanding. Just
Well, and to me that is so the process of, and this is actually, so you when we first kind of started, Amy, you had brought up like, hey, I don't know if I'm ever, if I wasn't sure when I got here if this is where I would want to end up, right? But it's like I'm going to take these things, whatever they might be, lessons, ideas, processes, and no matter where I go, I'm going to take the good stuff and I'm going to try to apply it as best as I can. That process is where creating accountability came from, because if you've listened to, I think that would have been like 13 through 16, something like that. Creating accountability used to be one thing, and then we Carlo put every piece together. But the missing piece in that whole process was what I coined as a fall tolerance, because we kept talking about fail forward, and I'm like, but nobody's actually failing, and I don't like that word, and that word has such a negative context and a negative connotation behind it that it's like, if you're here and you're putting your absolute best foot forward and you have a growth mindset and you're learning, you're not failing, but you're still going to make mistakes. Like mistakes are inevitable no matter how much experience, how many, whoever you are, you're going to mess up. So I'm like, well, they're not failing, they're just falling, because a failure is getting into a failure mindset. So when you let the thing beat you, and you can't win anymore, and you can't get back into collaboration, now you failed. But that process was like that. There was a lot of hours in Ben's head put into that idea, is all because it's so hard to put that idea of learning by mistake in front of people. Like, it's so hard to be like, hey, I'm going to have you do this thing. I'm going to throw you on the bar right now. And then I'm not going to show up. I'm not going to say anything about how you're doing for 3 hours. Positive or negative, we are just going to let the wheel spin.
We're going to see what happens. And you're trying.
Right.
And you want growth.
Yeah.
Great.
We're here for you if you need help. It's not like...
But the thing that most people expect in that is like, hey, you're doing a good job. And in this context of emergent, urgent, it's so hard to set that time aside in the moment. Like, we have, one of the things about after actions that is, it's good and bad is most of the time it revolves around a negative event.
Yes.
You can do them around positive events, but it's so hard to find the fucking time to do it right. And that's a similar thing where it's like, hey, this is working, so let's just keep going, because guess what? That line hasn't gotten any shorter. There's still 15 patients on this bar, even though we've gotten 15 out in the last 30 minutes. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like, we have absolutely hammered this out. And, I know that it's been, the priority has waxed and waned over time of like really wanting to make that more of a priority, but we can acknowledge that it's hard to be like, you're doing a good job. So what happens is the negative, when you learn in the negative, it can sound like negative all the time. It can feel like they're only telling me when I'm making mistakes. But the thing that you really have to hang your hat on and just keep your mindset positive is, in the way that you do it is through forgiving yourself, is if it's quiet, that means you're doing good. If you're continuing to do your job, if you're maintaining that standard, it's like nobody's really going to be like, you're doing your job really well, because it's just going to get disingenuous too over time.
You say that, but then I'm doing the thing, and I'm telling the support staff at the time. I think I only had like 3 people I was directing because we didn't have any hands. But I was like, I'm sorry. I'm going to tell you right now, if I'm like telling you to do something and it's wrong,
you got to say it.
You have to tell me.
Right.
And they did. Like, hey, you sure you want me to do that? Like, what if I did that? And I was like, yeah, that is fantastic. Right. And then at one point I was like, yeah, guys, like, I'm really, like, I'm sorry. I don't really know what's happening. And they're like, no, like, you're doing good. Right. I promise. Right. It's fine. Keep doing it.
Yep.
And that's all I needed. Was just me being like, I acknowledge to you, I don't know what I'm doing. You acknowledge to me, you understand that, and that like if I'm missing something here, I know that you're not just gonna like let me do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not
Like-
just going to let you eat that bullet.
Right? Like,
But even to go to your thing, Amy, about, you know, because running triage is an absolute art.
Oh.
It's hard.
Oh, man.
But, you know,
but even like the simple tasks,
yeah.
like they're gonna let you fail.
Well, that was Amy's example, right? Like in terms of like, hey, I want this radiographic image. In theory, like by the book, like it is simple. But you guys just said it. It's like, well, it's easy, but it's also not. And so you make a small mistake that your psyche is just like blows it up, right? It just, you make this big thing out of
entire brain.
Yeah. And you know, and excuse my gendered terminology, but you manned up and you just, you know, you owned it. That's what that is, right? And as soon as that happens, that's the thing about Carlo that most people don't understand, because he has a hair trigger when he needs it, is he also has a hair trigger on forgiveness. So as soon as you hit own it, he's all the way up into implementing solutions.
Yeah.
He takes for granted the forgiveness part, which is the slowing down and the saying, hey, you're still doing a good job. Hey, I know why you're here. So, you know, I've told him that 100 times. But my question then is, you made a mistake. What about the next time that same image came up? You didn't make that mistake.
Well, I won't.
You won't.
I won't. And because I knew why I did that wrong was because of a communication issue.
Right.
Then I'll be like, oh, well, if I'm going to take these same kind of rads again, I'm going to make sure, how do you want this?
Yeah.
Am I doing it right before I start?
And it's going to be super efficient too, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the thing about it is, once that actually goes through, you're going to ask those 3 questions or whatever it turns into, and then the images are going to be taken correctly, and then no one's going to say anything. They're not going to be like, well, who took these great pictures, right? It just doesn't happen. It's just reality.
But I think regardless, even if you miss those 3 questions the next time you did it, like, and they're again, like they're missing our stifles.
Yep.
Then you have that same you have that same conversation. Okay, like we missed it again. Like, why?
Right.
And then it's like, oh, communication error. Let's figure out, like, what do we need to communicate specifically when you're asked to take these rads.
Yeah, because with those ones, it's like, oh, well, we want lateral stifle, but then it said pelvis. So I was like,
VD pelvis. It's pelvis with the stifles.
Well, and I'm like, well, I'll give you pelvis, because it should focus on that. And it's like, granted, if I was taking pictures of stifles, I should then take the AP view, which is what he actually wanted for that one. And then the other one was a barium study, which in the like X-ray program that you have, you can essentially add you can add another study.
Yeah, you do the series.
And so I was like, well, there's already like 4 rads under this dog. Like, I'll just click the button here and then have the barium study separate. It's like, oh, well, it should be together, I guess. And so it's just just small.
But the process of working through, like, okay, like we thought we fixed it.
Yeah.
We didn't fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why didn't we fix it? Like, was it because we tried to fix it and it didn't work? Like, let's reassess. Like that, just like continual loop of growth mindset.
Yeah.
Boom.
Well, and then if I did it wrong, someone else might do it wrong. So if it was a communication error, is it like, oh, is it because just of your interpretation, or like could other people interpret it that way?
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Well, that's no different than Enerson, you saying like, hey, if I'm gonna make a mistake and we can catch it before I make it, that would be super if y'all could say something.
Yeah.
Because.
And they did.
Yeah.
And but like that, like support and understanding and the communication there. This is the first summer where I have felt like I would have said that. I don't know if I would have said that at another job previous in vet school, being like so like vulnerable with everyone and being like, hey, I work with you all. Like, we have a communication style in place when I am MSS and you are MSS, and we are like both simultaneously doing the same role. This is now a thing. don't really know what's happening. I'm going to be vulnerable, and I'm going to tell you I don't know what's happening.
Yeah. Right. Well, because as a student or as someone who is like pre-vet, anything like that, any opportunity you're given, you're like, I can't miss out on this. Yeah. So if you were to think, well, if I'm vulnerable and say like, hey, I might not do this right, like, or I might need help, you worry that they'll just say, well, don't do it.
Yeah, then they'll take it. Well, I have had that. I talked about in the last podcast where like experiences have been revoked.
Yeah.
Because of mistakes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I will say that if there is any wisdom that I can provide, it's that I understand that response, because if you are limited in opportunities and you kind of got to put on a brave face and maybe like fib a little bit to get your hands in, yeah, that's a thing. I get that. But you can't go into it with that being your active mindset either. It's like, yeah, you're going to say this shit to this person because you have to play the game. But also when you walk into that, and if you make a mistake, you can't let it break you because you thought you were that person. Mm-hmm. And then once you're out of the game, because everybody gets out of the game at some point, don't perpetuate the game. If whether you're here, whether you're somewhere else, whether you're not working in this industry at all, it's vulnerability. You have to have that, because the more that you can do it, the more other people will do it. Somebody just has to break the seal.
Yeah.
That didn't exist around here at all forever. Like that didn't just happen. Mm-hmm. It was we're all going to make mistakes, guys. And I'll be the first to tell you that I will make a mistake. Mm-hmm. I used to say that when I was on the floor, like literally every shift. Like, hey.
You literally said that over Memorial Day.
All the time. Yeah.
They're like, oh, make this estimate, Ben. And he's like, okay, I'm going to mess it up.
Right.
And they're like, sounds good.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I actually messed it up 4 times, but I got caught before it was right. So, but that, like, I literally would say that every shift. Like, hey, I don't know what my mistake's going to be yet, but I'm going to make it, and then I'm going to fix it. Mm-hmm. Or I'll let you guys know when I make it, and if I can't fix it. Yeah. And it would happen often.
Yeah.
But it's just the reality. So if you go into the scenario thinking like, hey, you know, if I'm of that mindset where I have to earn my place in doing this thing because I'm in vet school and I have to play this game, and if I don't say that I can do it absolutely perfectly, I'm not going to get it. You're going to lose.
Well, and it feels like almost like a political game. And
it absolutely is.
And I hate playing games.
It ain't getting any better, Enerson.
I know that. I know.
But so the thing is, like, just know that it exists. And I think that was probably, you know, and actually that gets me back to kind of where I think I wanted this to start, and I think we've gone a lot of good ways. But Amy, you brought it up. You refound your why.
Yeah.
In this process, Enerson, you've went from, you know, in that dark, depressed place of like, why am I in vet school, to now it's like, well, now I'm just going to get through vet school because it's like a bump in the road. Do I have to
finish vet school?
No, so we went from the email that I sent to Carlo that was like, this is bad.
Right.
Like, this is bad. To now, like, working with people, and I'm coming up to a point where I'm working a lot of my like last shifts with people.
Just getting sad.
And getting really sad and being like, no, like if I could stay,
right.
If MSU could just tell PAW what I need to learn, and then I do the thing and I don't leave, sure. But like, I'm gonna make it through the rest. Don't worry.
Right.
I'll be back.
Right.
Like, no problem. Like that is so like a complete like, not just 180. Like we have like completely different like mindset from where I was like 2.5 months ago.
Well, and that was when Bree Kraut was here, because we were her first rotation.
Oh yeah.
That was deliberate. It was like, hey, we're gonna get, because it, you know, I don't know the actual scheduling of how vet school works, but it was like, you're gonna be here as soon as possible, because it's gonna set the tone for all of the rest of the political game that you're going to have to play. And I think Bree's a pretty perpetually positive person, but her clinical rotations are going relatively well as far as I can tell.
I have no idea, but I hope they are.
Right. Yeah. But the thing is, like, it sets that tone. And I think that's what you guys maybe have learned in this process is like, Yeah, there's some games that are going to have to be played, but isn't going. Hopefully, and I'm going to defer to the both of you to answer this question: is how do you feel like that is a foundation that can't be shook anymore?
So, at least like the vulnerability, accountability, as far as that goes, at least for me, this wasn't like my revelation, which it's stupid. So the first time like I felt like I really put myself out there and was accountable is I hit the wrong light switch. So
here?
No.
Oh, okay.
This is years ago. I'm working at the barn, and this is a really stupid story, but this is something that sticks in my head. Like something very small, but you stood up for it. Nothing bad happened. You can admit you were wrong or you did something wrong. And so like I went to go into a room, flicked the light switch on the outside. It turned all of the arena lights off. And I was like, oh, shoot. Yep. That's not good. Like, did I flip a breaker? And then the lights take like half hour to warm up to turn back on. Yep. And we had like lessons coming. And I was like, oh, my God. And they're like, what happened? And I was like, and I took a breath and I was like, I hit this light switch. And they're like, oh, okay, that's for these. So like they turned off. We'll just turn them back on. And I was like, that's it. Yeah. Like, I'm okay. I lived. Right. And so it's one of those things where like my boyfriend wants to say that I never say that I was wrong, but I do frequently. And I think that that's helped us a little bit in communication, where you don't really fight about being wrong or not. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. I was wrong. Mm-hmm. And then you just move on. Mm-hmm. And everything happens so much faster. Mm-hmm. And so coming here and having that moment where I'm like, oh, I don't really know you guys. So like there's that little bit of tension of like, can I really be vulnerable? Will I lose my opportunities? Mm-hmm. And then to just do it. And again, nothing happens. Mm-hmm. Everyone's like, well, that's great. Yeah, we'll learn from that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think if it can work in as many different settings that I've used it so far, like I can take that anywhere. And I think people really appreciate seeing you, especially when we're going to go out and be doctors, which some places have the hierarchy and might see you as like the leader.
I think all but most.
But here, you're not. But yeah, so going out there, and if people see you as like this leader or a role model, and if you're okay with being vulnerable, you're changing the game already.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You would, by nature of your position, it is something that you have a greater potential to lead immediately, just because it naturally, and that's one thing that I think, I love Jordan Peterson because he talks you can learn a lot about hierarchies in reading his stuff, but we do that all naturally, right? Like in our head, no matter how much we say here, we toppled the totem pole, it's still, we understand that there's essentially a command chain in that process. And when you're kind of at the top of that, chain of command, there we go. It's like, if you say the thing and you're vulnerable, you do set the tone more naturally. And it's not to say that you're doing it with the intention of staying at the top of the totem pole. It's actually kind of with the intention of doing the opposite. Mm-hmm, yeah. But yeah, you're not off your rocker on that, where it's like, if you're in that seat and you set the tone of like, hey guys, we're gonna make mistakes, because the thing is, your risk is probably the biggest too in that role if you actually do make a mistake. But if you can just be a part of it and just be like, hey man, it's called practice. Yeah. We're still gonna do great. Yeah. We're still gonna do really, really, really good, if not great. And that's gonna be totally worth it. And we're gonna learn along the way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and working with other people, if you're working with nurses, technicians, support staff, anyone, and if they don't feel comfortable telling you that they messed up, right, all of a sudden a mistake's been made that you're liable for. Right. And it's because there's no trust there. Right. And you're like, well, that's not helping anyone. Right. So I guess before I run away from, or we get too far off of that, like when we did the Instagram thing, we had made the joke in the middle of it that you were definitely not wanting to do the ER thing. And then you guys walk into this and then there's like this little, like,
I can feel this little bird that's chirping up in the corner that like Amy might be reconsidering that thought. But like, and not to say that it's...
There have been some 2 a.m. conversations.
Yeah, you'll have that. But I guess walk me through kind of where your head's at. Because I think we got a pretty good... I think I have a pretty good idea of where it was. But where is it at now?
Yeah. Like I said, kind of in the beginning, I've always been pretty comfortable seeing myself do different things, so it's hard for me to pinpoint exactly what I want to do, and apparently even if I do try to pinpoint it, like coming into vet school, I end up doing something completely different. So I'm very like, I'd say half and half. Half of me is tense as to like, well, what am I going to do? The future. I got to like plan. I got to do this. And then the other half of me is like, well, it's worked out so great so far. Like, look where you are.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, coming into this, the people I had seen be like, oh my gosh, like I'm gung ho for ER. Like, well, let's heck and go. Let's do it. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I've never experienced that. Like, I do at times like a little bit of a hectic atmosphere to like get your adrenaline running, like doing something interesting, something exciting, really pushing through. But I'm like, I don't know if that's something like I want to do all day, every day. And so then coming here, I was like, oh, well, I probably won't really like this. I like the relationships you make with GP clients, caregivers.
Yep.
And then I'm like, the other side of my brain is, while I'm here, I'm like, shoot, this is really efficient. Like, you could do wellness visits in a totally different way, and it could work out so much better, so much faster. And so I'm like, well, crap. Like, how do I mesh this? Or now I'm in a position where we're trying to look for externships. And a lot of the time, this is my crisis right now, where now it's like, well, I should be trying to find places that I want to kind of like interview.
Yep.
And I'm like, how do I find them? How do I find...
Well, you look on their website where there's absolutely zero information.
all the websites are like cookie cutter. They're the same mission statements, like, we're do good medicine. And I'm like, cool, but
that's the bar here.
No,
okay, the bar is that we practice good medicine.
I'm like, I need
thanks for stating that.
Well, no, and now, like I said, you guys ruined me essentially, because I'm like, well, how do I find a place that I want to be that's another force of change? Because I can't just go somewhere and be like, oh, this is the status quo, like this is boring. No one wants to keep growing. No one wants to keep doing better. No one wants to like integrate new things. Or like, if I have to go somewhere, then it's like taking a step backwards essentially. Well, I'm like, I don't want to live in Wisconsin. So if you open a practice like in the South where it's warm,
well,
I'll be there.
That goes back to, you know, when I think when Carlo and Katie bought the clinic, they called like they had an individual or a team of people call like every clinic in the entire state. It was like 500 some clinics, and they like how many of them would be interested in selling. It was like 460.
I thought it was like 394 out of like 410.
It was a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Like it was like 80+%,
yeah.
And that was 6 years ago. Almost 7 years ago, and that number ain't going down. So you talk about opportunity, you know, and to me that's the biggest thing. That was when we had Bree on here for 61. You know, the idea of a dream practice. In reality, you're probably not going to find it. You're probably going to have to make it. You know, you can start with an advantage. You can start with a better team. You can start with people that, like, when you tell them what it is that you want to do, like, really attach themselves onto the idea. You find your Enersons of the world, right? Where it's like you say the right thing and they're like, I'm going to do all of that. Where do I have to do that?
That is a really valid point. That happens, I wouldn't say frequently, but that is certainly what has happened here.
Yeah. So and it's not, you know, and the thing is, it doesn't matter where you go, and that's why I say don't be afraid of that vulnerability. And that's you know, we talk about golf now. I think about light switches. Like, don't be afraid of the light switch.
Yeah.
If you're not sure which light switch it is, just hit one, because in the end of the day, it's a freaking light switch. Who cares?
Yeah.
If you hit the wrong one, turn it back on. Yeah, it might be a mild inconvenience, but at the end of the day, if you hit it right, no one's going to say anything, because it's just, this is what I was supposed to do. I was just supposed to turn a light switch off. And you just, it's vulnerability. Just don't be the guy that has to ask every question along every step of the way, because that's going to slow everybody up.
Yeah.
But you're gonna take all of that stuff, and it doesn't matter where you end up. It's going to be intoxicating to the people that you're around. That's the thing about this whole process. And as as we have gone from growing that web of, in the exam room to the clinic to the community, now into the schools. I mean, every time that it's in a 1 hour of somebody saying what is happening here. So, because I could put you two in front of the house system to explain what PAW Health is, and it would probably sound a hell of a lot like Carlo, because that's just where it comes from. You can't tell me.
When I talked to my family about this when they were visiting,
right?
And I had to explain it 4 different times.
Yeah.
But they're without context. Yeah.
But legitimately, they were like, cool, and they have never.
Yeah.
That has never. They were like, "Are you sure you like that job? Do you really, or are you just like?"
But the thing is, you guys, there's, you guys were just in it. You were just in the pit of I have no hope.
Yeah.
And when you talk about there are these things, because for you, Amy, it's efficiency. It's about problem solving. It's about seeing things that aren't going well and having an environment and a team that's going to let the problem get a solution, right? For you, I don't know if that's exactly what it is, so I'm curious what is kind of that drawing factor. I think that's a part of it, but I don't think that's all of it.
I think it's a part of it, but just the team and the communication and
I think it's that collaboration that really hits you. Yeah.
There.
Yeah. But they're different things.
Yes.
So having that environment of all of these different things can happen. You can be yourself, and you can have hope. Those are two pretty big fucking things. Excuse my language. Is it doesn't matter who says it. It's that's going to be absolutely attractive and intoxicating to an overwhelming majority of the people that are in your similar circumstance and shoes.
Oh, you mean you're in the pit, and
not
only is it offering to raise up a little, it's we're actually above the pit.
Yeah.
And all you've seen is the pit for 2 years.
Yeah.
Minimum at this point. I feel like that, the hope is such a huge thing.
Yeah, and that was a big player too. I remember in the original email I sent to Carlo to be I want to come work for you for the summer. Mm-hmm. It was I've worked in places where I have great coworkers. Mm-hmm. They're wonderful people, and I feel you lose them, or you feel they feel trapped in a corporate atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And it's just there's wonderful people out there.
Oh yeah.
You just got to put them.
They're kind of endless, actually.
Yeah. Well, you have to put them in an environment that isn't going to knock them on their butt.
To crush their soul.
Right.
Yes. I mean, that, yes.
Yeah.
You have to put them in a growth where they can grow and, flourish. Mm-hmm. Because there are so many coworkers, I've gone through a lot, a good number of jobs. And there are coworkers I love and I trust, and, I would work with them until the end of time.
Yeah.
But if you put them in an environment where they're not allowed to grow, just watching them slowly become the rest is devastating.
Oh yeah. Well, and two, at least pertaining to apparently how I look at practices, and my form of growth being that efficiency and better processes.
Yeah.
Is when I was working at the small animal clinic I worked at, they they had some sheets to give out, things like that, and I'm well, these could be better. These are super outdated. With every puppy and kitten exam, we should be sending home a new updated sheet. And so I was well, I'll do that. And so I started making essentially caregiver resources. Yep. And it was all these things where I'm these things need to be better. We need to be continually doing better. And it's just well.
But where we're at is fine.
In a corporate atmosphere, there's only so much you can do. Because it's well, sure, maybe you could do your little project.
Yep.
But is that going to be enough?
No.
It's not.
No.
Yep. I think that I want to know where your head is at, because I didn't get there yet.
Oh, you haven't gotten there. Okay.
But that was a really good little sequence of talking points, because you guys hit on a lot of stuff that I think what you're learning is, and this is probably more for you, Amy, is you're not necessarily learning exactly what it is that you want. I think you're open to opportunity. And that's where that, like, you know, I'm in vet school now, but I can't necessarily say where I'm going to be in 5 years. But I think you are learning a lot about what you don't want.
Yeah, I can tell you a lot about what I don't want.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and as far as, like, saying that, like, what I do want, I kind of know in a sense, but it's an abstract thought. It's like a big picture thought. It's not like, I want to work at this practice doing this.
No.
It's like, how do I find the practice that fits my box?
Yeah. Yep. And so the more, you know, you talk about finding locations to do your rotations at, define that box and be like, hey man, I know in reality that this is and I am giving you an abstract set of variables that I really think are of high value, and I've either experienced or I need to experience to know if they fit in the box. So of all of these things, what can this clinic expose me to better define what I think that this box needs to look like when I graduate? Because you're not going to walk in and be like, hey, I like everything that you do at this clinic, right? Because, I mean, it's PAW's the same way. And like, not everyone's going to like everything that we do here, and that's perfectly fine. But if you can define that set of variables and essentially create your own interest list at that point, it at least lets you have a focus for those 3 weeks, as well as getting exposure to maybe some more old school ways of doing things or whatever it might be. You know, if it, like you said, if it's just your typical GP that's been around for 40 years and you have to kind of play the game a little bit to get exposure to 2 or 3 of those things, what that does is Amy's not here to do the old school GP thing. She's doing the old school GP thing because she's focusing on these other 2 variables. So I think if you can better define that out, it'll make it a lot easier for you to just walk into a rotation, be like, this is what I'm doing, versus, crap, I don't want to do this.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that has stuck with me is we did a networking event through the house system. They have the CVM Connect where they have
That was the biggest sigh I've ever heard ever.
I think Bree and I talked about this a little bit on the last one.
Anyway.
But say what you're going to say. I have opinions about the MSU networking events.
Whatever. Anyway, I got some good stuff out of the CVM one, well, the CVM Connect one, because that's stems from the house system being like, well, we'll bring in mentors. So everyone that came to network is an MSU alum.
Okay.
And I met quite a few people there. Some of them did all sorts of random things, and it was mostly just chit chat. But one person I met, she actually owns a practice down in California. And one of the things she told me, because I'm like asking advice, I'm like, the VBMA has me like, I need to be so prepared to like get a practice.
I need to know what I'm doing.
And it's like this and this and this and this. And she's like, no. She's like, I was able to learn all that stuff in like a year. Like I hired someone, they taught me how to do it. Now I know how to do it. She's like, don't worry about the business stuff. She's like, just focus on being a good doctor, like for your first couple years, and then worry about that. And I'm like, I should learn how to be a good doctor first.
Yeah.
And it makes so much sense, and it's super simple, but everything gets in your head when you're in school thinking, well, I want to be a practice owner. I need to like prepare so hard. I need to know all the things. It's like, you don't need to know all the things.
Right. Yeah. Interestingly enough, the next podcast is going to be with Thomas Kyle, who, I hope I say his last name right. I know his first name is Thomas. He's the guy that runs the VBMA podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's a really good transition for anyone that's listening after this.
That will be the next one.
Right, this is the next one. But yeah, actually, that's a part of the... and that was actually what we talked with Bree about, too. Is like, hey, like, yeah, you're going to have 5 years to, like, figure out how to be a doctor and then buy a practice. Like, but if you don't have the doctor thing... Not to say that every practice owner has to be a doctor, but if you are a doctor and you don't have the doctor thing and you try to own a practice, it's going to be pretty fucking difficult.
Yeah.
So, Enerson, I really just need you to go on a rant here because I can feel all of this energy coming from the other side of the table.
What do you need to rant on?
I don't really know. Like, I want to know what is on your mind because you are here for 3 more days.
I don't want to talk about that.
And it's sad. I understand that. But that's it. If you had to start a sentence right now and not know where it's going to go, what does that sentence sound like?
Well, you see that's not usually how my brain works, but I will try for you. So I have never, like going back to school, like I've been in school, like I didn't take a gap year, right? Like I have been having like summers off, and like you're normally like sad to go from your job. No, like I am more than sad. Like I am like disappointed in life for forcing me to go back to school at the moment.
Right.
Like that, like I know it has to be done. Yeah. Like, and everything like that. But like I'm definitely hopeful. And like I know that like the mentality that I have set, like the foundation from this summer, like that is there. Like I'm good. And I just have to keep that, like keep it up here and like all my Google tabs open in my brain. Keep that right there and be like, okay, bookmark that. Like, remember how you felt that summer and how good it was. And then you just have to make it through this and then you can come back.
Right.
Right?
So that actually brings me to my next thing, which I'm really glad I remembered this for the 4th time in the last hour and a half.
It's fine.
One of the cool things that I did with Christina when we did like they were here for probably like the first like 4 months, and then I did like an hour-long interview with Christina and Lauren and Rhiannon, which I turned into a minute worth of video on Instagram because it was too loose, but whatever. Is in that sequence of events, it was, all right, Christina, tell your future self something. What would both of you tell your future self 6 months from now?
Where does 6 months put us?
6 months.
Or at the end of your last semester of didactic learning.
Like right before we go into clinicals?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like spring break.
That you've made it. I think that's like the important part. Because like clinicals, they're going to beat the crap out of you, right? Like you are, an indentured servant at that point for a majority of your clinicals. And it's going to be hard and it's going to be grueling, but like you have done it. Like you are like you are going to be a vet. Like, cause the likelihood is like 0.0001% that like I won't make it through the last semester of didactics, right? Like,
no, it's 0.
Right. Like, but when you think about like, whatever. Yeah. But like, I feel like that was when I interviewed at MSU. That's like what got me is like they had that panel of students and they were like 3 of them were like, no, like I start clinics and like I've made it.
Yeah.
And just reminding myself that those last 14 months is about like practicing. Like, that's what it is. It's applying the knowledge that you have worked really hard to shove into your brain, and it's in there. It's just gonna take a bit to sort it out, right? But like keep that growth mindset up. Like force those around you in a gentle but like not gentle way,
an assertive way.
Yeah.
Yes, to also have that vulnerability and to also like practice what you have been preaching and practicing for the last couple months. Like keep that going because that's the only way that it's going to get better. And like, yes, it's hard. Yeah. But like in the long run, like it makes everything so much better. Like, and just keep chugging because you're almost there. Like you're so close.
What do you got, Amy?
Oh man. See, and I'm looking at it in a different way where like, granted, yes, we do have some didactics left to go through, and that's not really something I've like really put any thought into.
I have no idea what's happening this semester when we go back.
Right, granted,
I have no. We have junior surgery like 1 day a week, right?
Oh no, yeah.
What are the
my
other
boyfriend's
things?
upset. He's like, "What is your schedule?"
I'm like, no, not even the schedule.
I hope
What
hopefully
are
you'll know.
What are we learning?
Something.
Oh yeah, the description of like all the different like things you'll learn. Things.
I don't know what's happening.
No, and so I guess my like kind of stress going into like this next phase is more about like, yeah, I'll get through it. Don't worry about it. What am I doing after? Like when I graduate, do I have a place to go? Like where am I going to be? And so that's where my brain is like freaking out right now with like the externships and stuff. So it's like in 6 months, hopefully I'll be able to say like, good job picking things.
See, I would say that current Aimee, or maybe it's a little bit easier to, some people are able to like apply themselves in future tense, and it's easier in past tense. I'm actually better in the past tense than I am in future. But to me, it's going to be, hey, Aimee, you didn't think you could do this, and you did it anyways.
You've done it.
Yeah. I think
because in reality, I would wager a large sum of money that you're not going to have your P's and Q's in order when it's necessary.
Yeah.
Don't worry. I'll take that anxiety on.
Well, that's one of the things, but I can't feel like...
Don't assume it. Don't take it for granted.
And like I said earlier, it's like, look where everything has gotten you now.
Yeah.
And you didn't plan this. This happened because of like just you kept doing things you were interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I keep doing things that I'm interested in and things that I like, it's going to lead me to where I want to be, even if I don't know where that is.
Yep.
And so hopefully I can just keep reminding myself of that. And I know mostly me talking to me in the future is a little farther than 6 months ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things where, well, where do I get the audacity to say, like, it's fine, don't worry about it.
I don't know. But I look at past me
a
lot, and, I give her a lot more forgiveness than I gave myself at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know what? Like, you did your very, very best, and, like, look at where we're at now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
And we're not, some days we're surviving, not thriving. But, like, things.
See, when I think of my past self, I think of, like, when I started trying to, like, write a journal or something stupid, and I wrote one page, and I'm like, well, I'll never do that again. And I look at it months later, I'm like, oh, you sound like an idiot. Like, don't ever do that again. And it's, like, so I think of my past self as, like, it was a good idea for you to stop doing that. But,
well, I mean, there are definitely things I'm really proud that I stopped.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, right, Aimee? Like,
hey, take it easy.
But no, yeah, I guess I should be giving myself more credit for choices. And I do at times where I'm just like, I'm so glad that I decided to do this and that I applied for this or that I stepped up. And one of my like proudest things about being in vet school and having my group of friends is how much like so I'm technically, when like I start, like I meet someone, I'm a pretty like reserved person. Oftentimes I get the notion that people think I'm stuck up, but it's because I can't be like an asshole like right away. Like I can't let people know that my personality is very dry humor and it's I'm not okay. So in a
I know
good,
exactly
in a good way.
what you mean. Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where I've been so excited to like go into vet school, and I'm like, okay, my past self was like, I'm gonna go in here. I didn't take a lot of opportunities. I didn't do a lot of things in undergrad. I'm like, I'm gonna do the things. I'm gonna do everything I can. I'm not gonna have any like regrets as far as missing out on things. Mm-hmm. And that's the mindset I came into vet school with. And then I meet this group of friends, and suddenly I'm the confident, like outgoing group leader.
Yeah, when I dragged you in, and then I was like, so you seem to do things.
Yeah, and then so like I get my vet Instagram, and then I push them. They all get vet Instagrams, which they're not super active, but they did it. They're doing
a thing there.
And then
there's a profile picture.
Oh yeah, and I'm like,
I post.
Yeah,
sometimes
we're gonna do better. Don't worry about it. But no, and so it's like me taking that step to be like more confident and just put myself out there.
Yeah,
it makes me so excited to then be like essentially influencing them or like giving them the confidence to be like, well, maybe, yeah, we'll take on like a leadership role in a club.
You mean me being a house captain?
Yeah.
Because you bullied me? You were like, there's food.
There wasn't food.
That's coercion.
Well, okay.
No. There was bullying that then had the coercion of food.
Okay, so you have to get them there,
right?
To then be like, this is good enough. Like, you'll stay here, right? You want to do this cool thing with me, and we didn't even know how freaking cool it was going to be.
Yeah, right.
So no, that's one of the things that like I'm so proud of Past Me for. Like, anytime I put myself out there, and then I see someone else, because I did that, put themselves out there and like take opportunities and get to do things that they actually wouldn't have been able to do. Like, I'm like, oh, good job, Past Me.
Yeah.
Love you.
So then when future you listens to this, they can think, hey, I did it before. Why not do it again?
Yeah. Well, and it's like, well, who are you going to influence now?
Right.
Like,
there's just another person waiting for it.
Yeah.
Because it clearly something went right. It's like, because if you were terrible at it, right, the result wouldn't have been as good.
Yeah.
And maybe you would have taken that as a learning experience to get better at it. Maybe you would have taken that as a learning experience to not do it. Some people, but the thing is, if you try it and it's like, man, that went really well, like, I clearly know something what I'm doing, and maybe it's all abstract and I just kind of flew by the seat of my pants on it, and I really didn't know what I was doing, and I couldn't write a book about it and tell somebody else how to do it, but I know kind of that I did it right.
Yeah.
So why not try it again? And this group's going to be different, so I got to do things a little bit differently, because no two sets of people are going to be the same. But at the very least, I know why I did it, and as long as I have that, I can be adaptive to the how, but we're not going to lose the why. Right? Yeah. That's the anchor. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff, you guys.
I know.
That was a really good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you sure?
I think so.
Okay.
But I think they're all great too.
Okay, yeah.
But any final thoughts from you guys? What do you got? Anything?
No,
Bueller?
I mean, just
I'm so glad you guys got to be here.
I know, right?
Yeah. No, finally.
Yeah.
We did.
We finally got Amy in, right? She's just always doing things and working.
Busy person.
Yeah.
But
why do you have plans on your days off? What is that?
I mean, I only went back to Michigan twice for parties.
That's fine.
So, like,
hey, man, you gotta have a summer.
Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta.
Meanwhile, I'm like,
well,
there's a river
that was the
here
thing.
in Wisconsin. I like it. I don't need to go home.
Yeah, that was one of the things where I think I got Carlo to call me bougie.
When did he call you bougie?
It was while we were working one day, but because we had talked with him about how I'm like, well, I'm not just gonna live off of ramen noodles. I don't live my life like, because we were talking about the financial class that we took, and I'm like, well, what if I die tomorrow?
Right.
I don't want to have been subsisting on ramen noodles and living miserably just so, like, maybe my future could be a little better.
Yeah.
It's like, you got to live a little bit in the now.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, I'll put stuff on my ramen noodles. Like, I'm not just going to straight up eat top ramen, which I have, but, like, I'm not going to subsist on it was my point.
Right.
And so he comes up to me and he's just like, oh, yeah, I forgot you were bougie. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of fair.
Well, sometimes the podcast just comes to a natural end, and I think we're there.
I think we should cut it off before we talk for another 2 hours.
It might happen. You never know.
It could happen. You could have a lot of content.
There's a lot of things. I mean, Joe Rogan does 4-hour podcasts. I have no freaking idea.
4 hours.
Oh yeah, every one of them is like 3 to 4 hours.
Even intermission, like
No, he just goes hard. But the thing is, most of the time he has somebody that, like, I just wrote a book. We're gonna talk about all the things that are in the book, or he has Bernie Sanders come in and he reads questions off of a piece of paper that Bernie whatever. I'm just mad about that podcast, but that's me personally, and we're not here for that. But like I said, I think it was. I'm glad to have had the time to work approximate to you guys over the last few months, and I know that y'all will both be back at least for 3 weeks at some point here.
It's gonna be 6 weeks. Yeah.
That's right, because we can do the double down thing now.
Yeah. Maybe
it might be 3 weeks and then some time and then another 3 weeks. But
we're working on the double down.
Yep.
So, looking forward to that. You guys can do all doctor time, all that sort of stuff. It's gonna be a whole thing.
I know.
But and at that point, we'll do another podcast too.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So, thank you for coming. and being a part of this.
Yeah.
And
Rebecca.
I
don't look at me.
Don't cry.
He's like, let me just zoom the camera in.
That's gonna be
on
me
your tears.
Friday.
Yeah.
Oh God, I have already prepped myself.
And it's just a pause. So I look forward to the end of that pause. And again, I hope that whoever listens to this too is able to glean some sort of insight into if they're in the pit or if they're back into the land of hope and they had a great summer too. And if they are listening to this and they want to share their story, please email PAWCast@pawhealth.net. I will be more than happy to talk to you about it because I would love to hear a story from somebody else that isn't here about how it went really well. Because I really don't want to think that we're the only place that's instilling hope in vet students.
Right.
And I know it's not. I in all reality, there are other places that are doing good things, but I'm really glad that we were able to do it here with you guys, and I'm really excited for you to just be done with the vet school thing because I know that once you're done playing the game, once you're done, just muscling through it, getting through the mud, I think a lot of great things are going to happen for both of you, whether or not we know what they are or not. So, anything else?
No, I think I speak for both of us when we're just, this summer has exceeded our expectations, obviously. And it's really been amazing. And I'm just finally excited again.
Yeah.
And
that's
whether
so
that's
big.
Excited to go back to school, I'm refreshed, I want to do this, I want to get through it. I've got it. I got it back.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad you have it back. And with that, thank you all for tuning in.
Bye-bye.
We'll catch you on the next one.